Shabbat Shalom. A friend of mine is thinking of publishing a book with a small publisher, but she's hesitant to do it because the publisher does not use contracts. Rather, they just like to shake on an agreement. On the one hand, it sounds idyllic. How lovely that we can simply trust one another and leave out legalities. But on the other hand, legalities exist for a reason. In this week's Parashat Yitro, Moses and Israel gather at the bottom of Mount Sinai in a dramatic scene in which all of the people would hear the voice of God directly for the first time. In this moment of meeting, anything could have happened. What would God say? Would God promise to protect the Israelites' freedom? Would God shower the Israelites with words of love? Would God ask the Israelites to be partners in bringing holiness into the world? We read, "On the third day, as morning dawned, there was thunder and lightning and a dense cloud upon the mountain, and a very loud blast of the horn. And all of the people in the camp who were there trembled. Moses led the people out of the camp towards God, and they took their places at the foot of the mountain. Now Mount Sinai was all in smoke, for Adonai had come down upon it in fire. The smoke rose like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled violently. The blare of the horn grew louder and louder. As Moses spoke, God answered him in thunder. Adonai came down upon Mount Sinai, on top of the mountain." And what follows amidst this dramatic scene is the giving of the 10 Commandments. God spoke all these words saying, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not speak the name of the eternal Adonai your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor." At this seminal moment, when God speaks directly to the people, God presents them with the 10 Commandments, and through Moses, God reveals the entire Torah, both written and oral. So God, in this moment, offers a legal contract to the people, a covenant that would be for all time. We will follow God's laws, and God will be our God. At this moment of revelation, did God offer a way to ensure freedom? Did God ask the Israelites to be partners in bringing holiness into the world? Did God bless us with love? The answer is a resounding yes, and here's how. First, how is the Torah related to freedom? In the Talmud, the rabbis make a connection between the Hebrew word charut, engraved, and the Hebrew word cherut, freedom. So instead of reading that God's words were engraved on the stone tablets, we would read that God's words were freedom on the stone tablets. For the rabbis, Torah and freedom are integral to one another. This is the reason why God's first words to the Israelites are laws. As Rabbi Hirsch has said, freedom without law is not freedom, it's chaos. With freedom comes responsibility. We become responsible for making choices with our freedom. And not all choices are morally neutral. The Torah lays out a groundwork to help us. This is liberating. We have a code of morality and ethics to turn to. Just as God used the material of the stone itself to carry God's message by engraving literally into it the 10 Commandments right out from the stone itself, God took the fundamental experience of the Israelites, that of being freed from slavery in Egypt, and used that experience as a way of explaining the reason for many laws. While the majority of laws in the Torah do not have an explanation for why they are given, for those that do, the reason given is almost always the same. And it is because I, God, brought you out of Egypt. So these laws are directly tied to a foundational identity of the Jewish people. Just like carving straight from the rock, the laws are carved straight out of the Jewish experience, of having been slaves and having been redeemed from slavery. Torah commands us to fight for freedom of the oppressed as we were once oppressed, and welcome the stranger as we were once strangers in the strange land. In following these commandments, we bring the value of liberty for all peoples into the world. 2, how does Torah reveal the holiness within each and every one of us? The Kabbalists teach that God encompassed everything. And in wanting to make room for creation, God contracted God's self. In the process of doing so, shards of holy light escaped from God's wholeness into the world. So what resulted from God's contracting of God's self was not only creation, but holiness infused into all of creation. And these shards of holy light are among us. Our spiritual mission, then, is to gather these holy shards. And the rabbis tell us that one of the main ways to do so is through studying Torah, which leads us to do acts of chesed, loving kindness. When we provide shelter for the homeless, when we visit someone who is sick, when we strive to make the world a better place, we gather up these holy shards. The Torah commands us to look at our fellow human beings and to see that we are all creations of God, none more worthy than another. And finally, how is Torah an embodiment of God's love? What is love by itself without knowledge of how to manifest loving relationships? For this we have the Torah. For this we have law. God shows God's love for us by giving us Torah. And as we immerse ourselves in its teachings, we learn how to love well. We are, in fact, commanded to love in the Torah. We read, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, and you will love Adonai your God. And in this very commandment is a deep learning about love. The fact that God can command people to love shows that love can be a choice. People can choose to love rather than passively waiting for a loving feeling. Feelings go away, feelings change. So when God commands, love your neighbor like yourself, it's because love can be cultivated, expressed, and committed through continuous action. We are complex, we change, we get confused, and we often can't do it alone. We need something mitigating that we can turn to for counsel. And Torah gives us a guide on how to love well. For example, how to show love and nurture ourselves well. The sages turn to the commandment to love one's neighbor as oneself as a proof text that we need to love oneself, saying that we can only love another as well as we love ourselves. If our perception of ourselves is clouded by negativity, we can get stuck in insecurity and in shame and find ourselves cut off from others. On the other hand, if we're puffed up with a self-importance, then we can find ourselves being quite critical of others. When we are able to find the balance, we can love ourselves and others well. And finding this balance is something we have to continually commit to. And studying Torah guides us along the way. The covenant itself is an expression of love. And we're told, the rabbis say, that revelation is always unfolding. It reveals itself to each and every one of us every time that we study the Torah, and continues to reveal itself throughout our lifetime. As sage Ben Bagbag famously said of Torah, turn it, and turn it, for everything is in it. So claim the gift of Torah for yourself, turn it over and over throughout the years, and find the liberty, love, and holiness that comes from studying it. Shabbat Shalom.